Welcome to the June 2026 David Show Midstream Reading Series. My name is Paul Mattis. I'm one of the 4 rotating hosts. I'm deliriously happy to see a full room on a gloomy, rainy night. First, most important thing, restroom is down the hall. Just keep turning right and you'll find it. Thanks to Unity for giving us this room. It's ridiculously easy. We just show up. They set everything up. They tear everything down. It's great. So the host has the privilege of reading their own stuff first. So I'm going to do that, and actually I'm going to read 2 things. The first is a David Shove poem. It's been a while. And this one is called Haiku for the Ruling Class. Me, 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 me. Me, 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 me. Me, 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 me. So here's one of mine. It's called Rear Window. I want to share Alfred Hitchcock with my teenage son. His intellect is flowering, and it seems like the right time. So we watch Rear Window on the big TV with the lights off. I am prepared for an interesting discussion. Camera angles, plot twists, color and light, the beautiful Grace Kelly and the laid-back and slightly edgy Jimmy Stewart. But my son mostly notices wooden dialogue, stereotyped characters, Jimmy Stewart's drooping man boobs and squawking delivery, and their ridiculous age difference. He points out cheesy special effects. When Jimmy Stewart falls out the window, my son laughs. 8 years separate me from Rear Window. 42 separated from my son. That difference will not be bridged tonight. Okay. Peg Guilfoyle's latest book is An Eye for Joy, Noticing the Good World Everywhere from Sea Crow Press, and writes Motley Peg, a series of short essays with 800 subscribers. She is the author of The Guthrie Theater, Images, History, and Inside Stories, published by Noden Press, which won a Midwest Book Award and an Independent Publishers Award, and Offstage Voices, Life in the Twin Cities Theater, published by Minnesota Historical Society Press. Her commentary and essays have appeared widely. An Eye for Joy, from which she is reading tonight, is a finalist for a 2026 Next Generation Indie Book Award. She lives in, and sometimes writes about, St. Paul.
Thank you for that fine introduction, Paul. This is the sheaf of papers that I've been reading from. Do not fear, I'm not reading all this tonight. And it says, thank you for that fine introduction, Jane. And then Jane is crossed out. It says, thank you for that fine introduction, Aaron. And Aaron is crossed out. So now I'm crossing that out to thank you for that fine introduction, Paul. So I'm honored to be standing here and honored to be part of this series and in this beautiful building, which feels a lot like coming home. I want to thank you for coming. I think you probably know that any book of essays is a small book in a big, big book world, and it means the world to have readers and tonight to have listeners. I'm going to read for 15 minutes and 9 seconds. I timed it before I did. I'll start with this. This is from the prologue in this book, which is called Noticing Wonder and Joy. This is a book, says I, about the impulse to wonder, the practice of noticing, and the inclination toward joy. When my children were small and we gathered at the dinner table, I often made a little maternal speech. Tell me one thing, I would say, that you saw or heard or thought or learned today that was beautiful or funny or interesting or new. It was a way of talking, yes, and a way of getting them to talk, but I also wanted them to learn a kind of perception. I wanted the beautiful or funny or interesting or new things to pop out from the background, surrounded by a little glow, a little buzz, and lodge themselves in their consciousness. I didn't want them to miss the wondrous details enmeshed in the everyday, and I don't want to miss them either. So often, sometimes multiple times a day, I make the same speech to the universe on my own behalf. Come on, universe, show me one thing. And the more I ask, the more it shows me. And I think it'll show you too. What do I see? What you might see? Joy, surprise, wonder, everyday beauty, everyday sustenance and hope, faith in humanity in all its wild diversity and clamor. Every day is a box with a surprise inside. Not too long ago, I was biking through a lovely little pocket park very close to here, nestled at the foot of the High Bridge in St. Paul. Do you know this park? I was having a thoughtful day, and I stopped to settle on a stone bench, and something caught my attention. Behind an iron gate, the ground growth had gone to luxuriant weeds, and up through the weeds were two pale pink poppies, lovely and fragile and indomitable, making their way up through the spiky underbrush to offer passersby a moment of beauty. If you're a gardener, you know that poppies self-sow. And when we are alert, human beings, I believe, tend to do the same with beauty and splendor and awe. One small sighting leads to another. One's eye sharpens for the lovely, even when it springs from the weeds, and soon you notice it everywhere. Joy, it is my premise, is everywhere. Our difficult world is also a good world, full of humanity and kindness. Joy is around every corner, lifting our spirits and providing illumination to the dark. We all have the capacity to notice the good world and to bend ourselves toward joy in both small and profound ways, glimpses of the big, every day, everywhere, with everyone. I'm going to read edited versions of a couple of the small essays, making them smaller by editing them from this book. This one is called Run with the Enthusiasts. I am very partial to enthusiasts. It almost doesn't matter what their passions are. It's the ardor itself that sparkles and attracts. We are drawn to bright-eyed enthusiasm, and some of the voltage, nearly discernible, rubs off on us. It's unmistakable, a two-way thing. We perceive it, are drawn to it, reflect it, and catch it. We are ignitable. Traveling in Las Vegas once, I wandered into the back of a bodybuilding competition, and I watched the posing and the crowd, fascinated. An offstage builder, muscled and oiled, came to me and smiled and said, "This is a very good family sport." And at that moment, I was completely convinced, because enthusiasts can be found everywhere. I have a friend in the horse industry. Her enthusiasms are the arcane details of breeding programs, the bright, soft look of a newborn foal, and the consumption of evening champagne. A young woman I met was setting out on a 50-day bike ride on the Pacific Coast Highway to raise awareness of suicide, having lost her veteran brother the previous year. She was shining with health and eagerness and mission. She wanted to tell the story. Enthusiasm is transmissible, and I would argue life-giving. It is not the same as expertise or charm or even magnetism. It is different from the impulse to educate. It is, in a way, a child's capacity for engagement and wonder. It is a natural bubbler, as contagious as laughter, and the absolute opposite of boredom in all its insidious manifestations. There is no yawn about it. It's a gift that you have, and it's a gift that you give. If you love something, you come alive with it, and then tell the world about it. There are nearly 8 billion people on this planet. Your cohort is out there. Go find them. You'll have a lot to talk about. If you're weary, feeling a little grayed out, find an enthusiast in any subject. Stand close enough to be caught and start running. That is Run with the Enthusiasts. Thank you. Thank you. So I'm going to read this little piece in a different key. One of the things about essays that they can be about absolutely anything, which I demonstrate amply in this book and in my other writing. This is called Meeting Sister Ebo, and it has some roots in this building. In 2015, I joined a Unitarian pilgrimage to Alabama for a symbolic march to commemorate the 50th anniversary of the Voting Rights March from Selma to Montgomery. Crossing the Edmund Pettus Bridge, you'll remember this, on March 7th, 1965, hundreds of civil rights activists led by a very young John Lewis were attacked and turned back by state and local police, and that day became known as Bloody Sunday. 2 days later, Martin Luther King Jr. led a symbolic march to the bridge, and following a court ruling on the right to march, thousands gathered and crossed the bridge on March 21st and walked 12 miles in 4 days to reach the state capitol in Montgomery. When I was there, I hitched a ride from Montgomery to a memorial at Tabernacle Baptist in Selma to hear Dr. William Barber speak about poverty. At a Shiloh Baptist church supper in the church basement, I listened to a Selma woman tell how her mother had died untimely because the local hospital had no black blood to give her. I made a friend of another marcher, a black woman who looked over our group and said to me in absolute confusion, "Who are you people?" I didn't know there were any white people who cared about me and my family. For me, the pilgrimage was a week about learning to be moved and sustained by the virtue of others and to feel joy in their presence. And as I, exhausted, boarded the plane out of Birmingham, I encountered an unexpected and lasting blessing. I took my place and looked over at my seatmates the way we do. The little woman by the window was the justly famous civil rights activist, Sister Antona Ebo, a nun who'd arrived in Selma in 1965 and was the only African-American Catholic sister to march with Dr. King. Now she and a companion were flying home to St. Louis after crossing the bridge with President Obama and U.S. Representative John Lewis. When we arrived in Chicago, I was able to help nearing her 92nd birthday. She was radiant, serene, unmistakably saintly, full of a vigorous joy, and very funny to boot. So when we arrived in Chicago, I was able to help her a little. We both had to change planes, and her connection was very tight. I trotted ahead of the wheelchair, clearing people out of the way as we rushed to her gate. We made that wheelchair fly, laughing as we went, and she called out an occasional, "Have mercy." And when we parted, she said to me, "The Lord had it on his agenda for us to meet today. And although that is not my common parlance, all I could think of was, well then, Lord, thank you, thank you. And maybe under my breath, have mercy." Sister Ebo. This is a recent piece from my essay series Motley Peg, which I'll say another word about in a minute. This is called Teens in Full Flower. This is an experience that we're all having right now, all over right now. Teens. Suddenly, they are everywhere, like flowers, or possibly more like dandelions, since they spring up without warning and they dominate the eye. They grow very fast. They seem to be always turning themselves toward the sun, and they cluster. Of course, dandelions aren't noisy and they don't move around, so I must beware of the metaphoric breakdown. Maybe what I mean is birds, since they stand out particularly well against the sky just before nightfall. They flock and swoop, seeming to move in a mysteriously motivated connection, always in relation to each other, like a murmuration. And they go in affinity groups, birds of a feather and all that. I went to the Guthrie, as some of you also did, I'm sure, last month to see Little Women, and ended up sitting in the balcony. And I loved that play and that story, and I was listening hard. So in the first act, I noticed audience noise from the next section over, and really, I thought, really? Rude. And then I noticed that the murmuring and the small sounds were in response to the story that was unfolding on the stage. At the act break, I looked over. It was a high school drama club, maybe 25 of them, wild-haired, pierced, creatively garbed, fluidly gendered, leaning forward eagerly in their seats, clinging to each other's arms, their avid faces turned toward the stage light, catching and reflecting the story's high emotions. They were making continuously little supportive teenage gasps. That character is a rebellious girl who speaks up against authority. Yes. That character is mischievous. Ah, that character is wooed by a handsome but poor tutor. Ooh. That character is very sick and will die in the next act. Oh. At the bows, the teens were enthralled and weeping and leaping to their feet, mascara running down their young cheeks. One heroic chaperone hurrying to keep up as they rushed out to meet the actors. Why, we're actors too, they were broadcasting. We're just like them. They were adorable. And why not strut? They are lovely as they flaunt and sashay. More power to them. They do not know, nor should they, that this is a brief season. From a famous Romeo and Juliet film of many years ago, now you must imagine the sound of a lute. A rose will bloom, it then must fade. So does a youth, so does the fairest maid. The teens bloom. These young people in their flowering also don't know that there are fine seasons still coming. Take it from the mature, who watch you now with admiration and pleasure and memory. We're smiling at you from passing cars and park benches as you prance and flutter by, living in the Herculean present, the absorbing present, the evergreen present, the moment, this moment. Shine on, beauties, shine on. Long life to you, and a good one. The vast buffet of the world is ahead of you. There is so much yet to come. Teens in full flower. I want to thank you for coming to hear some prose, some essays, and I want to mention that I hope you look at this book and love it and give it to others. People are loving it, I'm happy to say. And also to mention that I write a new short essay like this teen one every couple of weeks, very wide variety of topics, and I brought a sign-up sheet. I would be happy to gladly add you to the distribution list for the series, which is called Motley Peg. I'm also visiting book clubs. If you have a book club, I will come. We'll talk about books. It'll be fun. So this book is drawn from the Motley Peg series, which itself was born during pandemic times. You'll remember this. For a while, uncertainty and darkness seemed to tilt the world and our individual sensibilities. For me, remembering, seeking, and then lifting up moments of beauty and goodness and joy reminded me that they still existed in that gray landscape, and that they were there for me to see and savor. Others found the series, and the list has grown as the readers have passed them to others. So the glimpses gathered here that I gather in my work, I hope, build a solid case for wonder. The good world is not always pretty, but it is beautiful and big and bracing and bright. To pay attention to it is a life-saving spiritual practice, and anyone can do it. Art, theater, history, architecture, the natural world, and wit all retain their beauty and their strength. And the joy and intimacy of human interaction, however small or sporadic, remind us that connection and stories are what knit the world, our splendid and complex world, together, and always will. I'll just close by saying a word about finding joy in a difficult period, in a difficult world. It's actually more than one word. The words that I use for this are sustaining and life-giving and more important than ever for everyone. Thank you very much.
That was Peg Guilfoyle. Greg Watson is the author of 12 collections of poetry, most recently The Shape of Your Absence, published by One Subject Press. His work has been nominated for Best of the Net and the Pushcart Prize. He is also co-editor of The Road by Heart, Poems of Fatherhood. Greg Watson.
Thank you all for coming out. It's so nice to have a receptive audience and not read the empty chairs. It's been a couple of years since I've been in this space, but it's always such a nice space. The new book, The Shape of Your Absence, is a book of mourning. It's a book of memory. For my partner in my younger days of about 10, 11 years, died unexpectedly. And so it wasn't a book that I expected to write or wanted to write. One poem just kind of sparked the others, and here we are. The first section of the book is called Body, and it's more the memory section of our little time on this earth. This is called Moment. That day outside of Berkeley, white fists of ocean whirling below, a vast wingspan of cloud, stretched thin and ghost-like, warm air thick with the salt of summer. In that moment, weightless and electric, you were a woman certain that you could fly. The corners of your blue eyes, drawn taut with the confidence of a crow, the small of your chest fluttering open, mindless and expectant. And then something beyond flight, beyond yearning, pulling you back, waking you human with a shudder, sharp as sunlight through sheer columns of rain, kissing you full on the mouth before you could know or speak its name. The other part about this book that made it work, I guess, but it's a little strange bringing these poems out into the world. I wrote this basically as though no one were ever going to hear these poems or read these poems. It was a very internal dialogue. So forgive me if I botch any lines. Most of these I have not read in public. This is called The Afternoon She Did Not Die. Well, we go on, one hand floating weightless as a balloon, the body pulling itself downward again. Our bones can only be lifted so much by this wind, and the ocean is so vast before us. But what residue remains, like soot from a long neglected fire or a thumbprint on the soul, and it belongs the way a bruise belongs, the way our shadows spark and smolder without us, solitary when shut away for the night. Today I walk with neither haste nor direction, the sex and the sad lettered days discarded, the fact of my name, age, and profession lost to the angular wind. I carry your words in one pocket, your silence in the other, past the once familiar storefronts of our past, the soft glow of your childlike face gazing back at me and back upon itself, a foreign postage stamp on an antique postcard you bought but never sent. How can I answer now, knowing this business of words, this stooge's religion, to be diversion at best. How can I speak when addressing you now means addressing any tree or cloud or patch of grass? You have grown vast by way of vanishing. You always said it was an art, a trick you could not unlearn. But we go on, each in our separate ways. Our bones can only be lifted so much by this wind. But the body is such a stubborn guest, unwilling to leave despite the late hour. We may as well settle in, make up the spare room. Most of these poems are free verse, some are prose poems, some are very short, and some are written in stricter form. This is a ghazal, a couple of those in here. And this is a ghazal for Trish. There were no half measures with you, no formalities. You simply slammed the door to yourself and were gone. It was always an option for you, your sister reminds me. The simple choice between being here or being gone. Some words have sharp edges we dare not touch. They insinuate themselves among the silence, never gone. You wanted to leave no discernible trace in this world, as though you were never here and therefore never gone. Grief has made a spare key to the rooms of my life, arriving daily to remind me that you are gone. My ghosts travel lightly, as familiar as my back teeth. I'm losing track of my days, of who's here and who's gone. In the end, you weighed next to nothing, your body already slipping out of view before it was gone. Always a perfectionist, you had practiced too for this. You left 1,000 times before you were gone. So one of the most difficult experiences I've had, and one of the most surreal experiences, was being invited by Tricia's family to come back and clean out her things from our old apartment, which was kind of like walking into a museum. Nothing had changed. So this was really the first poem that I wrote in this, about that experience, and it's called Cleaning the Rooms. I would not have imagined in my younger and more selfish years that when we agree to love, we agree also to the dust and drudgery of it all, the stacking of cups and dinner plates like so much sculpture, the endless knots of hair, both human and animal, spun and discarded with the heavy wet clumps of litter, our grease-streaked reflections gazing from the tea kettle as if from a great distance. Nor could I have imagined returning after so long away to clean and sort through this long neglected museum that once contained our life together, while your siblings in the next room calmly discuss legal documents, final arrangements, salvage and dispersal, the practical tasks that must be tended to, and are done, it must be said, with no less love. I could not have imagined being anything other than young within these rooms, prone to drink and bad decisions as we were, but also to affection, laughter, the secret language granted only through time and intimacy. But now time has found you, here alone, taking you from the bed we once shared, the room where we held each other for warmth on winter nights, when the antique radiators offered nothing but cool silence. I want to slow all of this down, stretch out in the rickety papasan, turning within my palm every thrift store bauble and picture frame, to trace with my fingertips the grooves of the old oak writing desk. I want simply to breathe you in and out before this sacred mess is gone. But we, the living, are nothing if not efficient today, boxing up your old Corningware, your well-organized stacks of books, taking from their wooden hangers the sweaters and dresses that still bear your slender shape, sweeping away 34 years of your life in a few short hours. I take down the Stieglitz print, the Klimt painting I gave you for your birthday a lifetime ago, the cracked and yellowing photo albums, the red brick of a candle you never lit. Walk slowly up the block toward Dale Street, more slowly than necessary, pausing at the corner as though I might see you in passing, just back from the co-op or coffee shop. But only the crows are out today, fat-bellied, with neither fear nor apology, weighing down the branches and wires, declaring themselves again and again, the exclamations of their voices impossible to place, their shadows living and permanent. I feel like I'm reading the more bleak poems in here tonight. They're not all so bleak. Some are just memory, and some even are slightly amusing. But this one is called Ashes. For weeks, then months, they sit undisturbed on a makeshift shelf in your brother's musty garage, the gray-white residue that once answered to your name, packed neatly into a surprisingly small cardboard box, unadorned and anonymous. Drums of exterior paint and car exhaust surround you now, boxes of tools and bulky winter clothing packed into large plastic containers, the ordinary stuff of life still in process. This is not the respite that I would have wished or imagined for you, though you will be relieved to know that this stop is not final, only a way station before the long drive out of state, where you will be scattered, per your request, out near the railroad tracks running the length of your old hometown, where your mind, always too sharp and too busy for its own good, could wander with neither wait nor interruption, and your body could walk and walk, never losing its way back. It's a walk I can't make with you, but should I hear the call of that Illinois Central rising above the chatter of birds and traffic hum, declaring its own speed and distance at just the right angle, I'll say they're playing our song, as if I could remember the words or tune, as if the grain and grit of your slender bones were somehow able to dance again. And there are a few of these very short pieces kind of scattered throughout the book. They're the little palate cleansers.
Mm-hmm.
This is a short one called Not Yet Done. We are not yet done talking, you and I. The pause in our speech has simply outgrown the words that once contained it. And I do carry on conversations with my departed. I carry them around. I'll read just one more. This is it's a winter poem, really, but it's 1 year after your death. The winter sky reflects the river today, as it always does this time of year, each gray-blue sheet device indistinguishable from the other. The narrow shadows lengthen, drawing fence posts around the empty spaces. Everything becomes clinical fact, every step taken a punctuation mark. The what has been said and what has been left out remain unclear, hovering like my own breath before me. How is it that I cannot see you now, yet feel you closer than this wind, this hardened earth, the bare limbs of trees reaching like roots in reverse? All I know today is that we are not made merely of things that happened, for better or worse, nor the way we smiled or didn't in an old photograph. We are closer, I say, to the light itself, coming through the dusty window blinds, holding us there, frozen as this day, making us believe we are the subject, that we are the ones standing still.
Margaret Todd Maitland is a writer, editor, and teacher. She has published essays, book reviews, and interviews with artists, and received a notable essay listing in Best American Essays. She worked for 10 years at the Minneapolis Institute of Arts, where she managed new acquisitions. As managing editor of the Hungry Mind Review, and later as editor of Ruminator Review, she published book reviews, interviews, and essays by A.S. Byatt, Louise Erdrich, Neil Gaiman, Yoko Ono, Arundhati Roy, and Nobel laureate Wole Soyinka, among others. She has taught creative nonfiction in academia and at the Loft Literary Center. Margaret Todd Maitland.
Thank you. Thanks to Paul and to everyone who organizes and manages this series. And to the memory of Don Brunkwell, a poet, child psychologist, and friend, who brought this series from a Lake Street attic to Unity Church. Yes, I write essays, and I am attracted to situations of beauty and ruin. They are always complicated. I'll start with an epigraph from Jim Moore. Everyone, everywhere is just holding on. The last time I saw Kenny, he hustled toward me with a red bucket. There aren't many homeless people in my St. Paul neighborhood, but for several years this man has been working the parking lot next to my favorite cafe. As usual, I was happy to take him up on his offer to wash my car windows while I went in for a coffee. I had grown fond of him. He sloshed an ancient squeegee in his soapy water and started scrubbing. Whatever you want to pay. I was lonely in those days. My husband had died, and though I had a place to live, all warmth had vanished from the house. I might as well have been living on the dark side of the moon. Kenny was often the first person I spoke with on a given morning, and his friendly sales pitch cheered me on my way to work. After a few months of window washing encounters, I introduced myself. Kenny, he replied with a grin. Later he would confide, my mother called me Kenneth, conjuring a long-ago kitchen radiating warmth and love. Maybe his mother humming as she sets out fried chicken and cornbread and greens. His voice grew deeper, speaking of her, and I could feel the strength of the bond between them. He was proud of his mother and she of him. In that vanished world, he was a bright, eager boy, a treasured son. Now in our cold Minnesota winters, he slept in gas station bathrooms. He was a Vietnam vet. This meant we were close in age, 70s. Why should I be living like this when I sacrificed for my country? Anger cut through his usually upbeat demeanor, the measured friendliness of a black man approaching customers in my white neighborhood. I had not felt angry on behalf of Vietnam vets for years, though I knew young men who had died there or had come home carrying terrible suffering. This time it hit me in a new way. I could see how war lodges itself inside soldiers like a virus, crippling their health into the unimaginable future. Kenny said he didn't like shelters, too many rules. I figured that he was making a choice to live as he did. He always seemed to be facing problems and finding ways to cope. My tennis shoes are broken, which probably had meant frostbite from tramping through snowdrifts. But he'd heard about a better pair he might get his hands on. In a climate where every winter someone sleeping outside freezes to death, he wore a skimpy threadbare jacket, but he had created a network of gas station restrooms and could go from one to the next when an owner threw him out. He always seemed hopeful. One hot summer day, Kenny looked miserable. I offered to get him a cold drink from the cafe. Juice would be nice, he said. When I came out with my coffee and his juice, I asked if he was hungry. He was. I offered to bring a hamburger from across the street. But then it seemed better to suggest lunch in the cool restaurant where he could get off the steamy parking lot. When we crossed the street together, his gait became loose and loping as he left behind the agitated posture of the parking lot entrepreneur. Suddenly I felt nervous. The terms of our relationship had changed. Now we were no longer a worker and an employer, but simply a man and a woman crossing a street for lunch. My whiteness and the whiteness of my neighborhood flowed around me like a cold current, and I felt embarrassed. Was I proud of my benevolence? Was I enjoying the power of my relative wealth? I felt exposed, afraid I would be judged, positively or negatively, as a privileged woman in a flowered sundress helping a destitute man in battered pants. We entered the blessed coolness of My Burger. It was a new local restaurant that had bizarrely decided to imitate the national franchises. This artificial house of plenty with its orange plastic seating and neon menu seemed grotesque, a slick promise of nourishment to which I had easy access, and he did not. I could turn up my nose at fast food. Kenny was hungry for anything. He asked for a cheeseburger, fries, and a large Coke. I ordered for us both, which felt strange as he hung back, helpless, and I pulled out my wallet. But what would we talk about? We stood side by side against the restaurant wall, waiting for our orders. I noticed the proximity of his tall, muscular body. Since my husband's death, I had felt his physical absence as a sharp grief, but also as a lack of vitamins. His maleness no longer a part of my daily diet. I was missing an essential nutrient. I had fallen into crushes on random men, strangers on a bus, waiters, TV news commentators. I didn't have a crush on Kenny, but I felt the energy of his maleness, his aliveness. Up close, I noticed his gray stubble, streaked t-shirt, and bloodshot eyes. He broke the silence. I ain't been so hot since Florida. He had traveled there once to visit his sister. I had gone for decades to the Gulf Coast on family vacations. As he spoke, his voice dropped again into a new register, and he came into focus as a real person. As a real person, not just a figure acting out a role on the street. Pleasure spread across his face as he told Florida stories. He was fascinated by manatees, those bulky aquatic mammals that graze the seagrass in coastal canals, finding their food everywhere, at home in quiet waters. Florida, with its waving palm trees and hot beaches, had seemed a dream for him and for me, a world of physical ease and pleasure for northerners who carry the ache of bitter winds in our bones. That's when I started to feel terrible. Maybe the matter-of-fact reports about his life had allowed me to be immune to his hardships. Maybe I was grateful to have my windows washed and to talk to someone in the morning. Maybe denial, the mechanism of emotional blindness by which we protect ourselves from disturbing realities, was much stronger than I realized. When he shared some of his inner life, when I heard his imagination blossom out of its hiding place, I felt the cruel injustice of his poverty. I felt the horror of cold tile floors in anonymous gas stations. A shiver of shame passed through me. I owed my prosperity in part to a distant ancestor who had arrived on this continent by choice from England in the 1700s, an adventurous fellow who had fought in the Revolution. His descendants built a factory and prospered, making fine leather gloves during the centuries when proper folks wore gloves. Some of that industry, those profits, came to my generation. From those gloves, my husband and I could buy a house. Kenny had neither profits, nor house, nor gloves. He liked manatees. He was intrigued by the mystery of their otherness, their gentle lives. We shared an experience far from the present and awe at the wonders of creation. My day-to-day life was probably as unimaginable to him as his was to me, but we had met in the realm of memory and imagination, where warm seas bless everyone. The orders came up, I handed him his bag, and we left the intimate space of the restaurant to cross the street back to our separate lives. You shift gears here. But thank you. The fundamental weakness of Western civilization is empathy, claimed Elon Musk in an interview with Seth Rogen back in the heyday of his government wrecking job. It's like, I believe in empathy, like, I think you should care about people, but you need to have empathy for civilization as a whole, not commit to a civilizational suicide. The current attack on empathy, the idea that it is dangerous, is gaining traction with people who believe that it is more important to preserve the historical fantasy of a homogeneous white American society than to help particular individuals. It feels as if the structure of our nation's belief about humanity is wobbling. When I think about my experience with Kenny, whose whole name I will never know, I understand how a generally compassionate soul, as I imagine myself to be, can block out empathy, because empathy is a hard job, harder than sympathy. Empathy means to feel with someone, not just to have feelings about them and their situation, which means to feel their pain. I wondered how Kenny became homeless. I happened to be reading about urban renewal in other cities when I remembered that the construction of I-94 through Minneapolis and St. Paul destroyed Rondo, a thriving Black neighborhood. I did a little research and was horrified to discover that 650 homes were bulldozed, along with 300 Black businesses and organizations. The busy commercial street, home to the Blind Pig Cafe, Booker T's restaurant, Baby Muriel's, Walker Williams Pool Hall, and grocery vanished. Even the name of the street was erased. Rondo became Concordia, now a frontage road to the freeway. Driving along I-94 recently, I realized I was flying through a ghost town, a cavern filled with noise and air, speeding cars instead of cheerful shoppers, heading to the Busy Bee grocery or the Love Tailor shop. Now a chasm separates my neighborhood from what remains of Rondo. Bulldozing of Rondo and building of the freeway happened between 1956 and 1964. Kenny might have been 9 or 10, 16 or 17. Did he first experience homelessness when his family's house was condemned and the bulldozers showed up? I haven't seen Kenny in a few years. I don't know if he is still alive. But one summer, as I walked through a downtown St. Paul park on my way to the farmer's market, I noticed 4 or 5 Black men talking in a group. They were at a distance, across a stream from me, but I thought one might be Kenny. I was happy to see him leaning into a shared joke with his comrades. He was too far away for me to try to greet him, and I wouldn't have anyway. Sometimes at the parking lot, he remembered my name. Sometimes he didn't. I figured I was for him a part of the blur of humanity that passed him by every day, the strangers on whom he depended for never enough food or warmth or friendship. I've thought a lot about him, though, and the one moment when talking about Florida became a kind of intimacy, when the great emptiness he carried and the silence that had become my main companion were put on pause. When the manatees swam past us, finding everything they needed in protected waters, where mothers and their offspring rub noses and communicate with clicking sounds to keep each other close. Thank you.
That was Margaret Todd Maitland. Thank you. So I have some bits of business to attend to. First, we are blessed with books. You should buy some. You should buy lots of them. Second, we have an email announcement list. We send out 2 announcements a month. So an announcement of the next reading and a reminder of the next reading. We don't share that list with anyone. So if you'd like to add yourself to the list. And then I had mentioned that the church provides this room to us for free, but we're also allowed to say thank you. Oops. So I will pass around the basket. Okay. Mike Hazard is a filmmaker, photographer, and poet, and a friend of mine. He is about to retire as camera worker and writer-in-residence of a micro nonprofit which he founded in 1975, the Center for International Education, the CIE. The Elmer L. Anderson Library has collected the entire body of work he created and will celebrate with an exhibition from 6 to 8:30 p.m. on Tuesday, June 30th. The program is at 7 p.m. Hazard likes to say, everything I make is a love story. Mike Hazard.
Thanks, Paul. It's a pleasure to be here. And I'm going to read a series of poems that grew out of filmmaking. Each poem connects to a particular film. And you can find all these films on YouTube, where I have a channel called @MichaelHazard. And I also wanted to give a nod to Margaret Hossey, who has dug into my poems and found the good parts and helped me focus the work in sometimes dramatic ways, and I'm grateful. The first poem I'm going to read is called, the film is Media Dada. And Media Dada is a film that I began 40 years ago, which I'm still working on. And it began 40 years ago when my wife, Pat Olson, was pregnant with our now daughter, Sonia Hazard. Sonia turns 40, July 18. And it led to the creation of a short film to which I've added pictures as life has unfolded. But it's the movie itself has not changed length. I add things. And most recently, I added a tiny bit of my granddaughter, who calls me Pop Pop Mike. And this is her name is Mary, and this is a poem called Hailing Mary. I cradled baby Mary in my left arm for 3 days before I'd looked into her eyes long enough to see my grandparents and my grandparents' parents and my grandparents' parents' parents. It was a deep dive into humanity, a vision of birthing the earth. I was pulled back into the present, shuddering with the goodness and the giddiness of life. then zoomed into the future. My grandchild as a parent, her children as parents, their children's children, and children's children's children as parents. Myself as a great and greater parent and grandparent. I cradled the past, present, and future in my left arm. With a bottle in my right hand, Mary suckled. Hailing Mary, I whispered, pig out, piglet. Squirm, worm. Fidget, widget. Piss, papoose. Drool, fool. Poop, pup. Burp, twerp. Smile, child. Love, dove. Hailing Mary, I prayed. Blessed be the BMing and wee-weeing baby. Blessed be the beaming mommy and daddy. Blessed be all our relatives. Blessed be a grandfather, yours truly. Blessed be the great we that is the human family. Thank you. Media Dada. So I've been lucky to make a dozen films with the late Robert Bly, and in the first or the second film I made with him, he recited a Yeats poem, "Mad as the Mist in the Snow," and I love this poem. I'll just do two of the verses. Bolt and bar the shutter, for the foul winds blow. Our minds are at their best this night, and I seem to know that everything outside us is mad as the mist and the snow. You ask what makes me sigh, old friend, what makes me shudder so? I shudder and I sigh to think that even Cicero and many-minded Homer were mad as the mist and the snow. Yeah. William Butler Yeats. In the film, Bly goes, he was 70 years old when he wrote that thing. So I made this film, and really it was my first kind of major film project called A Man Writes to a Part of Himself. It was an hour-long TV show. And my mentor, and really the director of the film, was a friend named Greg Pratt. And this is a little story from that, and it goes like this. The dream made us all dream large. Once upon a time, Greg Pratt saw Robert Bly on public TV in my first video, a sampler of Minnesota poets. Pratt was so blown away, he sought me out to seek Bly out to make a full-blown documentary. We did. Really, Greg did. I watched, I listened, I learned. Greg immersed himself in the poet's poetry. I remember he was mystified by Bly's then newest book, This Body is Made of Camphor and Gopher Wood. Then he followed Bly as Bly read aloud at Augsburg College by reading along silently with the book in hand. After Greg beamed. I get it. The night before we filmed Robert at his farm in Madison, Minnesota, we stayed at a motel. A no-budget, independent production. Greg and I slept in the same bed. In the morning, he told our cohort, Paul Burtness and me, his dream. Sharing our dreams was something Robert was teaching us. The poet had placed a tall stack of his books on the TV director's chest and pressed them into his heart. when we told Robert that, he got even more excited than we were. Okay. So, a guy who knew a lot of poetry by heart, reputedly knew all of Yeats by heart, was Senator Eugene J. McCarthy. And I made a film with the senator called I'm Sorry I Was Right. And it started because I saw him introduce, I was in London in 1968. I missed that whole thing in person. But he introduced a film about Ireland at the Bell Museum, and he was the first time I ever saw him in person, and wow, was he magnetic. He was so powerful that as he walked up the aisle, I almost jumped up to just shake his hand. But there was a poetry reading at Kieran's afterwards, and I went to that. And he was standing in the middle of the back of the pub and reciting poetry. And not just his own, but some poems by others, especially Yeats. And so at the break, I went up to him and I said, Senator, I love poets who can recite their own work, but I fall in love with poets who can recite work by other poets by heart. And McCarthy looked at me and he said, what do you do? And I said, well, I make films about poets. And he said, make one about me. And it led to a 6-year adventure, which was wonderful. And at one point he got so sick that it almost killed him. And I wrote this poem as a conjure poem to try to bring him back. He literally spent a year on his back in a center. It's called We Were Gonna Smash the Ball. We were gonna smash the ball past those who bought the park. We were gonna listen to you play Mozart on the clarinet. We were gonna hunker down by the Vietnam Wall and feel the pierced heart of America. We were gonna remind the country about the tear gas in Chicago and how it still makes people cry. We were going to climb the steps of the Capitol and talk sense about democracy. We were going to talk about Saint Sebastian and private devotions. We were going to keep death daily before our eyes. You were going to recite Yeats until we all fell asleep and give a nod to Seamus Heaney while we were at it. We were going to change the world, and we still might. We were going to smash the ball past those who bought the park. Thank you. Okay, so I read this the last time I was here 2 years ago. It's a poem about Jim Northrup, which was another 6-year project. And resulted in a film called With Reservations. And I did not serve in Vietnam, but on Veterans Day in 1992, I went to Washington to film Jim, do a reunion and get together with some of his buddies from the Vietnam War. And I felt like I got a glimpse, and this poem is about a glimpse of what it was like to be in Vietnam, called Walking Point. Walking Point is to be a scout. And as an Anishinaabe, Jim was always being made to walk point because, Indians, right? Okay. These Vietnam vets reunite every year on Veterans Day like grim pilgrims. The ritual is righteous. Meet at Blackie's to eat a blackened steak. Jim, Fuzzy, and Raymond, and Vernon toast survival, then march to the wall in the dark. Smoke pot, talk, drink beer and whiskey, fight off crisp flashbacks of human skin on fire, the odor of singed hair. Then get really stoned until you black out and fall down immortally wounded. Get up like a mortal marine Notice your ghost patrolling in the wall's mirror. Run and grab a cab to Arlington Cemetery. Find a new grave in the black earth. Wonder why you're still walking point in this total eclipse of war and peace. Lay yourself out in a black hole, the latest in the line of white stones. Look up through the veins of a tree. Hear the taps of a bugler. Close your eyes and sense the blackness of a body bag. Open your eyes. Smell the fall air. Payback is a motherfucker forever. So walk. Walk past the wall. The farther you walk, the farther it is to your grave. That's for Jim Northrup, Anishinaabe scribbler. I can feel I'm already running long, so I'm going to skip a few. A safe space for stories. One film often leads to another, and I made a film about the McDonald sisters, 4 nuns who are also sibling sisters, 4 Sisters for Peace, and that project brought me to Peace House, a homeless shelter in Minneapolis. And for 20 years now, I have gone to Peace House, filmed many things, made many photographs, and have really regarded it as a kind of, as a church, a spiritual space for me. And going there grounds me in the kinds of reality that Todd was speaking of. Strangely, in your story, Jim Northrup, I had many dreams about Jim Northrup and manatees, and I just, this is coming back to me now. But so, Peace House, they have, it's welcomes everyone, and it's Portland and Franklin Avenue in Minneapolis, and they. This is a short poem called "A Safe Space for Stories." Stories are shared at Peace House, the living room of Franklin Avenue. People speak, and we, the people, listen. It's a space where homeless stories hit home. Near the end of a meditation, Soinavong Sivo Ravong called out to witness violence and the hell that has been happening and will. Then he ended, I still like tomorrow. Born in Laos, he fought in the Vietnam War. It's the war we must remember is also called the American War. He said, I stole a canoe to get out of Thailand. I came to the US in 1980. I work with fiberglass in Lakeville. I still like tomorrow. Yeah. Peace House. It's a film called Peace House Sings. Mother Earth is this poem, and it resonates with your essay, Peg, about Bloody Sunday. It grew out of a film called Happy Collaborator, which is a portrait of a filmmaker named George Stoney, and he's in this poem, Mother Earth. Nose buried deep in the smothering aroma of a red ripe rose. My mother-in-law's and my mother's love of roses rises from the dead. Roses decorated their coffins, an attar of angels. Plastic roses mark their graves. A rose is a rose is a rose. A rosy-fingered dawn taunts and haunts the poet's eyes. Rose petals marked the journey for John Lewis's last trip across the bridge that was crossed on Bloody Sunday. Blood red as red roses spilled. Rose thorns are good trouble. The florist snaps the thorns off stems. They bleed for us. My sweetheart holds a rose in her teeth, poses, smiles. Sister Rose flashes back, founder of Peace House. She believed in bread and roses and everyone's soul. A scene with George tending the rose garden should have been in our movie. I miss that. I miss him. I miss things. Life is a multitude of shoulds in the Book of the Dead. Our brothers and sisters are buried in Mother Earth. Our fathers and fathers' fathers are buried in Mother Earth. Our mothers and mothers' mothers are buried in Mother Earth. We nurse them out of the past with the perfume of memories, nose buried deep in the smothering aroma of a ripe red rose. Mother Earth. Thank you. I brought some books. This is a book called We Come from the Flower, and the story that I'm going to read is from this picture. The books are like almost free. I'll take donations of any size. They used to sell for $20, but I am eliminating all of these weights as I downsize. And anyway, so there's a few, but $5, $10, $20. This is a film that came out of a project photographing the Hmong American Farmers Association farm just south of St. Paul on Highway 52. Is a project that I call We Come from the Flower. The book is called We Come from the Flower. There's a film called We Go to the Garden. Many Hmong say, they don't say they go to the farm, they say they go to the garden. And this is one of the essays in this book of picture stories, and it's called Junggao, Beautiful. And the basic setting is the woman in this picture with the dahlia flowers, her mother had died, a heart attack in the field. And I came upon this, her daughter, while I was photographing for the farm. Her name is Shua. Shua is the oldest daughter of the late Yang Li. We first met at her mom's funeral. Quote, I come here to the field sometimes to look for my mom. I scream out her name. I wish I could talk to her. I want to hear that angel voice. I wish I had a picture of her and me. She planted more flowers than last year. She talked about how the fields are the memory of me. She knew she was going to leave. She planned to plant peonies here. You plant them in the fall and they flower in the spring. It is going to freeze tonight. Today is the last day. Cold is going to kill everything. Shua was standing in a crowd of dahlias. Many were already too crispy to sell. Quote, if Mom was here, there would be no flowers left. They would all be picked. My dad is taking it hard. He is so sad he cannot come to the field. I said, that's okay, Dad. We can pick the flowers. At that moment, the sun came out. Mom is shining. Tears streamed from both of us as the sun beamed. I told her the Hmong word I was learning for beautiful, Junggao, sounds like Junggao. I pointed at her, at the sun, and said, Junggao. Junggao. Okay, one more. More poems about the garden. And these are said at the farmer's market, which is where I first became connected with this particular farm by it turns out I was photographing the parents of the founder of the farm, not having met Paku Hang ever. And then one day after I made a film about Paul Wellstone, which Paku I interviewed for that film, she was in the St. Paul Farmers Market helping her mom and dad sell vegetables, and realized, oh, Media Mike, he makes films and he photographs, because I had been photographing her parents, giving them pictures of themselves. And so that brought me together with this project of photographing the Hmong farm. And but it started and continued in the farmers market. And this is 4 short poems in the farmers market. Meandering the farmers market with a camera in hand, I spot blueberries of happiness. Click. Apples of paradise. Click. Raspberries to make one gasp. Click. Cobs of sweet corn. Click. Aromatic bundles of garlic. Click. An array of heirloom tomatoes. Click. Sweet flowers for sweethearts. Click. Robust baby bok choy. Click. Golden sugar baby, orange glow, musk, blue pearl, Marie Antoinette, and sangria melons. Click, click, click. Immersed in the cornucopia that composes the plant kingdom, I mix an elixir of clicks. Second one. When I admire the shining strawberries and praise the grower, shining like a fresh berry, she says they shine the most the moment they are picked. How did we get here? In the garden, amazed by the lavender of Russian sage, the aroma of romantic rosemary, and the delicate lingo of cilantro. How did we get here? Number 4. This is for the herb man. His hand rests on a sun-ripened melon. Dirt jammed under fingernails, informed by ceremonies of dust and mud, he teaches. Every day above ground is a good one. Every day above ground is a good one. Thank you so much.
Mike Hazard. So another round of applause for our readers. So Midstream has a website, midstreamreadingseries.wordpress.com. If you want to get in touch with us by email, it's midstreamreadingseries@gmail. And if we can get our lazy video editor off his ass, this reading will be posted at Midstream Reading Series on YouTube in 2 or 3 days. Next month's reading is Thursday, July 9th. The host will be Diane Jarmanpa, and readers will be Sarah Carlson, June Blumenson, Michael Tisserand, and Ray Gonzalez. A bunch of us often go over to Sweeney's, 2 blocks that way, 1 block that way. Be careful, it can be a pretty rowdy bunch, but it would be great to see you there. So thank you all for coming.